Every method you've tried has something in common. The apps, the textbooks, the classes, all of them were designed to be the only tool you'd ever need. And all of them were designed to keep you dependent on them for as long as possible. That's not a coincidence, that's a business model. I'm Nick, I speak 4 languages, and I made an app designed to teach you the basics of any language in 2 months. The problem isn't that you're bad at languages. The problem is that nothing you've tried was actually built to get you out the other side. This video is about what it does. What you're actually doing wrong. If someone came to me and said they'd tried everything and nothing was sticking, the first thing I'd tell them is this. You probably have no idea what comes after the boring part. You've been sold the idea that the studying is the thing. It isn't. The studying is just the entry fee. What comes after it, that's where you actually learn. Most people never get there because they stay in the studying phase forever. They do the exercises, they keep the streak going, and after a month, they have maybe 300 words they can recognize inside the app. Take those words out of a context and put them in a real sentence, a real conversation, a real page of text, and suddenly they don't know them anymore. They've learned to recognize a pattern, not a word. That's a fundamental difference. And those 300 words, if you even get that far, aren't the 300 words you actually need. They're the 300 words the app decided to teach you. There's no overlap between what Duolingo teaches in week 1 and what actually shows up constantly in everyday language. I remember spending time learning the Ukrainian word for honey in my first session. I know that word. I will never use that word. Meanwhile, there are words that appear in almost every sentence I'll ever read in Ukrainian that I had to go find myself. That's what I mean by the wrong words in the wrong order. The actual method is 250 words. That's the entire foundation. 200 of them are high-frequency words, words that show up constantly across almost any context in the language, regardless of topic. Gabriel Weidner put together a list of 625 of the most essential words in any language. I personally went through that list with a critical eye and removed everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. I added a handful of words that I felt like were missing and landed on 200. That's the floor. That's the floor. Not because it's a round number, but because when I went through the list, that's where the genuinely essential words ran out. The other 50 come from you, specifically from whatever you actually want to do with the language. If you want to read Pokemon manga in Ukrainian, your 50 words should reflect that. They should come from Pokemon. If you want to watch football in Spanish, they should come from football. Whatever the interest is, you figure out the 50 words that show up most frequently in that context. In English first, then translate, and you learn those too. 250 words total. Everything chosen deliberately. Nothing is filler, and once you have them, you stop memorizing vocabulary. Permanently. So there's a reason why this number works. It's 5 words a day, and that's what my app is built around. It sounds like almost nothing, but it's actually a substantial daily commitment when you factor in reviewing the words you already learned. The reason I didn't go lower than 200 is that when I went through Weiner's list is that there were still genuinely essential words right up to the end. Going lower would have left real gaps, and the reason I didn't go higher is that I wanted to get people to the point where they can stop studying as fast as possible. 250 words at 5 per day is 50 days. That's fast enough to stay motivated, that's the sweet spot, and what changes after 250 words is that that's where it actually gets interesting. This is where it gets different from anything an app offers. Once you have those 250 words, you switch to content that you actually enjoy, but in your target language. It could be a dubbed series that you've already watched, manga you already know, I love manga, games you already play. You pick content you're familiar with so you can follow the story, even when your comprehension isn't perfect yet. And because you already know the story, every word you encounter has real context behind it. You're not learning words in isolation inside an app, you're meeting them in actual scenes with actual stakes. In the beginning, you slow things down. On YouTube, you can drop the playback speed down to 0.75. With reading, you just take your time. Don't look everything up. In fact, don't look anything up. This is the part that most people get wrong. They hit a word they don't know, and then they stop. They translate. They try to figure it out. What you need to do instead is to keep going. Trust that context will fill in the gaps, because it will. That's how acquisition actually works. With reading specifically at 250 words, you'll be able to follow most of what's on the page. Things you can't understand yet, you'll start to pick up from context. And as you spend more time inside the language, your comprehension deepens on its own, without it ever feeling like studying. I'm currently at session 20 out of 60 in Ukrainian. At this point, I can pick out words from a Pokemon episode with auto-generated Ukrainian subtitles. I'm not following everything, but I'm catching enough that I can already learn new words from context. If I can do that with a third of the vocabulary, the trajectory from here is clear. The hard part, nobody talks about. I want to be honest about what this method actually costs you, because no textbook, no tutor, no lifestyle change. It sounds like marketing. The first hard part is the 250 words themselves. There's no way around this. You have to sit down and learn them. 5 words a day for 50 days, reviewing as you go. It's not fun, but it's the entry fee and there's no shortcut. The second hard part is resisting the urge to translate. When you're reading or watching and you hit something you don't understand, every instinct says that you should stop and look it up. You have to override that. You have to trust the process and keep going. Most people can't do this in the beginning. The third hard part is, and this only applies if speaking is your goal, is eventually talking to real people. You can delay this by practicing with AI in voice mode first, which is genuinely useful for pronunciation, but at some point you have to have real conversations, and that's uncomfortable. There's no method that removes that discomfort. You just have to push through it. Proof? French failed for me completely in school. I took 5 years of lessons, I did the grammar exercises, vocabulary tests, and at the end of it, I couldn't use the language. The reason is simple. School was the only source of French I had, and I was forced to be there. Which made it boring, which meant I had zero motivation to seek out anything extra once I got home. No French theories, no French books, no French anything, just the lessons. And the lessons alone are never enough. Then I learned Portuguese. Started with Duolingo, I got bored, started looking for content I actually wanted to engage with, which would be series, films, books, which would be series or films or books in Portuguese. I wasn't thinking about language acquisition. I was just looking for entertainment. Learning, it happened as a side effect, and Portuguese moved faster than French ever did, with a fraction of the frustration. That's when I understood what had actually happened within my English. I didn't learn English in school. I learned it through Pokemon games that only came in English, and through hundreds of episodes of the anime on a fan site, or through chat rooms where I was trading with people to complete my Pokédex. I was reading, writing, listening, all in English because I wanted to, not because anyone told me to. School was just running alongside it. Once I saw the pattern, I went back to French. 1 month on Duolingo to rebuild the base, which, by the way, shouldn't have taken a month given I'd already done 5 years in school. But that's a separate point. Then straight into content. Manga I already knew, shows I'd already watched, that gave me time to read at my own pace. Or games that gave me time to read at my own pace. French started moving. I'd say I can speak French now. I don't speak it particularly well, but I'd say I can speak it. And the 5 years of school, it didn't get me there. Changing how I engage with language did. Well, you might be tempted to say that, yeah, this is fine for someone with talent, but I don't have a naturally ability, or I've been told that I have an ear for languages, and I think that's mostly a myth. I'm going to look that up later. And what I had that I am sure played a much larger part. What I had, and that I'm sure played a much larger part than any talent, was the motivation and the luck to stumble into methods that actually worked. The people who are labeled as language naturals are almost always just people who found the right approach, usually without knowing that's what they did. There are people who spent their entire school years being told they weren't language people, and then in their 40s or 50s decided to pick up languages and mastered it quickly. Not because talent suddenly appeared, because they learned how to learn. That's a skill that anyone can develop. Talent exists at the margins, but it is nowhere near as important as method. If you're starting from zero, go to the description of this video and there's a free 200-word PDF. You can download that and then figure out what hobby or interest you want to bring into your language learning, what content you'd actually want to consume in your target language, and find the 50 words that show up most in that context. Find out what words they are in English and then translate them. That's your list. Then start working through 5 words a day. If you already have some foundation, you probably don't need to start at word 1. Start consuming content in your target language right now, at whatever level you can follow. Find something you already know well, a show you've re-watched, a book you've already read, and watch or read it in the target language. Start slow and try to not look everything up. In fact, try to look up as little as possible. The app I built does this faster. It teaches you those 250 words across multiple exercise formats and context types, so you actually retain them rather than just recognizing them. It has pre-built interest packs for things like Pokemon, Harry Potter, football, cooking, and tourism. But if you can't use the app or don't want to, the free PDF in the description gets you started. The method works either way. You don't need more study. You need to get to the point where you stop studying as fast as possible, and then spend your time inside content you actually want to engage with. It's 200 high-frequency words and 50 words from something you already enjoy. Then dubbed content, manga, games, whatever it is, in your target language. The studying phase is short. The enjoyment phase, it kind of doesn't end. And that's what language learning actually comes down to.